Viktoriia, I'm checking if you're there. So while we wait for Viktoriia to join, I'm just going to welcome everyone back to Profiled. This episode's a special episode because it's your episode. As most of you know, we put some topics up on LinkedIn. You guys had the opportunity to vote, and you guys chose build versus buy for lobby personalization, which won by a landslide. So we're giving it a full session rather than just a 10 minutes and like a shrug. We really wanted to carve out a very dedicated slot for this. So whether it's somebody at your company that has already said this out loud, or your CTO, or maybe even your CEO, or even you, the thing that we keep hearing here is, oh, we could build this ourselves. And it is a fair thing to say, especially with what we're seeing in the market now. The problem, though, with that meeting or that discussion between you and your colleagues, or potentially the idea, isn't that the idea is stupid. It's that what we're seeing in the industry right now is that nobody is sitting in the room as neutral. So what do I mean by this? Your engineers at the end of the day want to build things. Your vendors are trying to sell you things. Your CFO is looking at two numbers. One of them is smaller than the other. And everyone wants to win. And everyone is arguing from where they sit. So for this episode, or rather, here's the plan first. How this gets decided, or rather how this gets decided badly, which is almost never about the math, can be answered more in several questions, which are worth answering before anybody opens a spreadsheet. There we go. Hello, Viktoriia.
Hey. Sorry, my internet
No.
just decided not to work at the same moment where I needed to get in. Yeah.
No worries. I took the opportunity to dive right into the conversation today. But it's good to see you again. I know we had a small little pause with conference season and travels, and then we had our audience vote. So good to see you. I was just saying now to everyone listening, that the three questions worth answering before anyone really opens a spreadsheet here is, how we're going to answer the questions today. We then have our own spreadsheet because you built one. And I'll be honest, some of it really surprised me when we went through the model and how these spreadsheets look. And I think the audience is really going to get a lot of value out of this. And then following you showing us, so we go through our agenda, following your spreadsheet being shared, seeing as you've joined now, I'm going to put you on the spot with some questions that I think everyone listening is going to enjoy, probably answer a bit about what people are thinking. And then just to conclude today, we'll finish with just straight answers on who should buy, who should build, and who should do something in the middle. So I think right now when we look at what building actually, took us in terms of how the argument's phrased, before any of that, I want to frame something, because Viktoriia is probably too polite to actually say this. So allow me to say it. The player sells personalization software. So you could argue in this case that Viktoriia's got a horse in this race, but that isn't really the shape of it. The player exists, for those who don't know them by now, the player exists because they built what they do first. And they found something nobody had solved properly. They built it, and it got good enough that other people could buy it instead of building it themselves. So I want to make sure that it's clear that this isn't just a vendor telling you not to build things. This is actually someone who has done both, which is the only kind of person really worth asking. So let me precursor that for Viktoriia.
Okay. Thank you. I would definitely not say that myself, but yeah. Yeah, so I think again, today we will be really discussing what it takes to build, and of course what it takes to buy as well. And again, we can always be creative, and find some interesting options as well. And first, what I wanted to say a bit more specific about what building actually took us, because yeah, that's typically another part which many underestimate, because it's quite often feels like an easy part. What do you need? Like a couple of people, target, and just go build. um, like, I would say that building definitely takes much more. And so we are, for instance, right now really in the middle of building our VIP intelligence. It is a project, I would say, already quite some time that we're working with it. And writing code itself was actually quite a small part. And Gali also knows because he's heavily involved. And what I'm just thinking that really important to take away if you're going into building thing is that, like, actually typically the first part is always expertise. So you can't really build if you don't know the domain from the inside out. You do need to look for different edge cases, for different logics, whether it's convenient or not. Like, there should be a lot of different hypotheses, which already in your head, like how you want it to work. Then the second part is always research, because having an expertise, having an opinion is great, but you do need to still dig into your data, maybe do some survey. Like, for instance, we have done recently a VAP operation survey. Again, everything to understand, like, what is actually needed, what are the pain points, and can we take something out of it in order to actually make this work even better for those people who will be using it. And only the third part, I would say, is actually the product itself. And again, the product itself, even first, it's always about. Okay, I'm just now sometimes now I'm worried that people will be texting me that there is no connection, but yeah, but everything is fine, I see. So the third part is the product. And even before you start building, you first think it's true. And for instance, even like within what we are building right now, is that like we actually had the technical layer already in place, like the machine learning AI layer. And what we were actually building right now is a wrapper, or like a product layer, so that you can actually use it in a much easier way with all the logics behind, where you don't need to again start thinking like, okay, how do I embed it into my processes, like how to prioritize, what to do first, how to look at it. That's also what the product should be looking at it. Yeah. So that's overall how I would at least like how we are typically thinking about it. And today we wanna, like, we're not going through the VAP intelligence. This is a very difficult case to take. So we're actually taking a bit easier case to look at, and we are taking lobby personalization as a use case. And actually, it's going to be anything. I think the logic is the same, but it's just kind of easy to follow and understand. And with lobby personalization, pretty much what we mean is the game recommendations, which are embedded into your lobby, where each player will see their own game selection. Yeah, so that's something which requires typically machine learning AI technology, and requires some of the infrastructure so that it actually works automatically without ideally a person, like doing something manually every day, but with the possibility to configure. Yeah, so that's, I think, overall the plan for today. And what I also wanted to mention is that, given what I already said, like expertise research, typically again, if you're going into building phase, I would really say what is super important in my view, already like within 3 years that we're building, is like first find your product manager. Product manager, or like, pretty much subject matter expert, maybe, sometimes that this is how it can also be named, because you do need to find somebody who actually loves this area of expertise, whatever it is, who loves, for instance, in the case of lobby, who loves the games, who understands the games, who played them well, who loves the players and understand like how they actually behaving, what data can say us, and like, different things. Because without such person, it's really hard to pretty much do anything, because, like, as always, technical part is always a enabler. You still need to guide, like, whatever you do technically. Like, even if we take an example of AI, yeah, like, you can prompt something, simple, and it will give you an answer, and probably, you will not be happy with it. If you actually prompt with expertise and understanding and the logic and the guidelines and stuff that you wanted to provide you the answer, then it will give you the answer that you will be happy with. So that's pretty much like this expertise and how you want to put it. This is your subject matter expert that you do need to have in your team, and in order to actually have this project successful overall, I would say. The second part is analytics. Always check the data. Data gives a lot of insights, and that's very important. And the third is build hypothesis. And then and the hypothesis can be based on expertise and data. And then with all that frame, you actually go only into engineering. So I would say that this is a part which many miss. That's why I just really wanted to highlight it at the very beginning, that without that, it's not possible to even start building. So, yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe Gali, what do you think about what I just said? Like, do you see that as well in your practice?
I do. I mean, I've seen so many projects begin from operators where they jump straight in because someone decided to vibe code a good idea that they had or they've been wanting to do. But the problem is it wasn't built on the fundamentals of what you've just described. It was built on an idea. And the reality is, in any kind of engineered technical framework, it can't be based purely on theory. You need data, you need architecture, you need practical use case. And the problem is and I'll talk about it a bit later with regards to like vibe coding, and the problem that I'm seeing now with how AI is being utilized is that having a good idea is not enough. There needs to be more substance to that idea. And this is where you get these amazing like symbiotic collaborations, much like what we're doing with VIP Intelligence, where you have the engineering expertise, the AI expertise meeting real world application, where we've done our research, we've done our analytics, we've seen how, for instance, lobby personalization is casinos present dynamically now, where every user has its own unique experience. But this didn't start as just an idea. It started from a problem. That problem evolved into research. That research evolved into a structure, and that structure became a concept that was built out into a product. So it has to follow the journey. And if it doesn't, it's going to likely fall flat.
Yeah. And, I will actually be honest here as well, that like when we were starting building, we actually had all of it. But anyway, we were like, there is a technical layer, and it should solve, like, it was done. There is a technology for that, so it should work. And then, like, when you just do the technology itself and you try it out in the real case scenario, and you understand that it actually doesn't provide what you wanted, and then you try to figure out, like, okay, so now we need to, go back and understand, like, okay, what is the target that we want to push? What are the constraints that we want to work within? Like, what are the signals that we can provide to the model so that it knows what to show to everybody? And even though, quite often I remember that I was hearing that, well, this is the technology, it should be personalized to each player. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure that it knows like what should be personalized to each player, unless you show it actually to the model itself, or somehow structure that in the way that actually it knows that for this behavior type you actually need to provide such game recommendations. And this
Yeah.
is something that we pretty much learned on the way. That was painful. And after that, I was like, okay, technology is not a solution; it's only an enabler, and that's very important distinction in my view.
Yeah.
So let's move forward. There are also some of the things. Sorry, there will be a bit of preview, so that's just kind of just to give you a bit of an idea, and we will go into Excel. Don't worry, we will. It just kind of a little bit some of the things that we really want to touch upon, because it will anyway come up, and
I
this
think
is
much
something
like
which is,
AI, we need to educate before we demonstrate, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, that's also
So
true.
consider this your guys' education before we unpack it all for you.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. So there are certain typically sayings, I would say, that I often hear regarding, again, the build part. Probably like, in a sense, why we're touching upon on the build part a lot, because buy is simple, build is a bit more difficult, and there is kind of a little different nuances which are important. That's why it's more around the build, just to kind of give a bit more idea. Yeah. So there are certain things that we're typically hearing, like, well, we can build it ourselves. It will take us 5 months. There are kind of 3 people needed, and then it's done. It's kind of in-house. Why should we buy? Which is kind of absolutely good reasoning, I would say, and definitely important. The only thing which is quite, sometimes missed, and that's why I just want to highlight here, is that typically it's not just, it's actually not a project. Yeah, like project typically has a start date and end date. And for instance, 5 months, you're done, the project is closed, perfect, it's working, no more costs incurred. Um, Typically, I would really recommend not to think about it as a project. It is actually going to be a cost center, and um, and 5 months, it's a good estimate, but always remember that from the first time probably you will have some of the baseline model. You will not be happy with the result. This is normal. I would say it will take a bit of iterations. It always takes more time, unfortunately. I'm always unhappy with that point, but it always takes a bit longer than everybody would like it to. So ultimately, it's not going to be 5 months; it's going to be longer, and there will be no probably ends, because again, there's still, like, even if you have a model which is working, there are certain things which are changing, like within the lobby personalization, for instance. You do need to take into account for there are new providers who might be adding, there are new released games which might be adding, there are kind of something which will start changing in the behavior of the players. That's why there might be a model drift and stuff. So there are different other things which needs to be taken care, even though it works, but there is a maintenance level needed. So that's why, again, like, since we're talking about Excel and how to think about it, probably it's not going to be just like, okay, 5 months investment and then like a very small maintenance. Typically it's just the same team still working, maybe not full time on this particular project, but actually maybe start doing something in parallel after month 8 or something. But pretty much the cost will still be there, and that's quite important to take into account within the calculations itself. Yeah, and also another point which is sometimes also understood, like, okay, many are comparing, like, okay, this is the fee of the vendor. Actually, for that same fee, I can hire, I don't know, 1, 2 people. in terms of salaries, and we do it in-house. So it's not only salaries, it's typically the infrastructure cost, which also needs to be taken into account. Just again, something to consider and know. And another third, I would say, point, which quite interestingly, of course, right now being heard by me a bit more often is like, well, we'll just vibe code it. And again, vibe coding is a good thing. It's just, again, important to understand that vibe coded code, is something that, again, like in order to actually make it work and make it scalable, and make it not break at some point, there is still somebody who knows what he's coding that needs to take care of it. So you still need to have a person. You can't really just vibe code it without understanding of the domain, because again, like ideally it needs to work real time, or like even like on a daily basis, depends on what you have, but it needs to work. You need to understand when it breaks and if it breaks. And ideally, it also needs to scale with the number of players that you are getting as well. So there is kind of many things to take into account, and just vibe coding, like, I don't know, a website, this is a little bit different thing, because with a website, you can easily see, and if it's broken, you see. But here, if something has broken in the model and you don't know what, that's a big issue. So yeah, vibe coding is understand that this is a new thing. There are limitations of it, and for the scalable solutions, AI can be a helper, but it cannot write instead of you. I would at least say that.
I'm like itching to jump in. Every time I hear vibe coding, like my skin crawls. It's fun, it's exciting, it's creative, but I'm going to jump into this last one really seriously here, because, and I suspect a few people watching are quietly nodding at it, going, oh yeah, we're living in this amazing age where if you can think it, you can build it, and vibe coding costs a fraction of actually buying a SaaS solution or commissioning a proper engineering service. And fair enough thought process. So why doesn't it work? That's the question. And there's several answers to this, and I'll share a very recent case study with everyone in a moment. But it starts again from a concept, one human, where this human thought starts off, and then we generate it by an AI. And either way, it's purely theoretical, because this was someone's like personal concept spat into an AI that built it based on what it understood by this theoretical thought. So depending how great the prompt was or how well you articulate yourself depends on how it's outputted. But most of the time, there's that huge data component that we referenced earlier that's missing. The problem with vibe coding is, which is only expected, is we get carried away. Oh, how far can I push my imagination? How far can we do things? And the problem is we start adding things that are redundant or unimportant to what we're actually starting to try and do. In addition to that, with many vibe coded projects, while the concept might be good or the core might be good, many vibe coded projects work in isolation, which is what you touched on as well. Rather than this being this cohesive ecosystem where every function has a purpose and they intersect with each other, vibe coding doesn't see that. Vibe coding works the way that it's been told to work. So it's not factoring in your player volume. It's not looking at enterprise level. It's not looking at scalability. It works in how it was built to work within the limitation of its creator. And the case study of this, and very close to home here, really does tell this properly. And it's the strongest thing that I can share related to why vibe coding and I, while we have our fun together, we're not the best friends when it comes to actual work. And I'll use an operator that contacted me not too long ago. Recontacted me not too long ago. They contacted me more than a year ago, where they wanted a segmented VIP loyalty program built for them. They were redoing their VIP model. They had to restructure their segmentation, and they came to us for support. We outlined a fairly comprehensive proposal. We outlined the framework of what we were going to do. We didn't really go too in depth on how we were going to do it and break down every granular detail, but they took the proposal and they ran with it on their own. They uploaded it into AI with no real context or experience behind what that proposal was actually talking about. And we didn't really hear from them for about a year. They've recently come back after this mentality of we tried to do it ourselves, we used AI, it didn't go as planned. Now we've lost a year, and then the cheekiest request that I've ever received came after, which was, can we hire you and your company and commission you to reprompt our AI? That was what the request was. And the answer is fairly simple. The answer is no, absolutely not. Firstly, you've wasted a year. So now everything has changed. Methodology has changed. Your environment has changed. Your players have changed. We are a year behind schedule because you tried to use AI to do this and it failed. In addition to that, upon reviewing their website, they released the structure on their website. So now they have a badly structured program because they didn't have the experience behind the logic that the proposal was built on. And thirdly, in all of this, you took a completely theoretical approach to what loyalty actually is, spent a year and money that was invested building it into your platform, and it was wrong from inception. And this isn't an isolated case. Like, it's happening multiple times. People are coming to us, they're asking how to prompt their AIs to do whatever it is they're wanting to do. And it's become a mentality of shortcuts that are there with the intention of cutting costs, doing it as cheaply and quickly as possible. And as we always say in the consulting side, cheap is expensive, because you're going to end up doing it again. And while you might make back money, you're never going to make back that time. And that is the message to take away from this whole, process, which is we're wasting time and we're going to waste money trying to cut corners by using, for example, vibe coding.
Yeah, and again, this is kind of highlights again that point is that technology is an enabler, and AI is also an enabler. And if you don't set it up on the right foundation, it will not work in the way that you want it to. So that's like very interesting case. I would be a bit cautious to wipe code a VIP program.
Yeah.
I mean, that really requires a lot of expertise. And again, since we're working with Gali together, now I realize how complex the EVAP world overall. This is like really not simple.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so moving forward, what's one more thing to talk before the spreadsheet, and I will be brief here and we go into spreadsheet. And by the way, very interesting point is that you just said that you just wasted time, and time is really important. Actually, in the calculations, time is I would say it's the most important part actually. And I will show you why. So again, before we go into the Excel, since we're talking about build versus buy, buy, again, because of the time component, it can win quite often. But there are certain things which are important to consider, where even if buy is winning, you still need to go into the build. And I would at least, say that there are 3 questions that you need to answer for yourself. Question 1, is this like what you want to build or buy? Is this your strategic capability, meaning that this is something that will keep you competitive in 5 years, and you would like to control it because of that, and it will distinguish you from all others, for instance? or is this just a extra revenue lever that can boost your revenue a little bit, let's say? Yeah. So I think this is super important question, because build money wise quite often can lose against buy. But if you're really thinking that this is something that will in the long run will help you to be much more competitive than you are right now, and it will really provide this competitive advantage, then this is something that typically is needed to be built in-house, ideally, of course, if you have resources as well. For instance, lobby personalization, yeah, if we're talking about it, in a sense, I would rather say, and again, this is something that can, companies can think about it. If you consider just lobby personalization, potentially this is a revenue lever, because maybe right now it's not that, you will not meet it all the time. Like, not many operators yet have it fully implemented in a good way. But I would say that in 2 years, it's going to be everywhere. So it's not going to be really a competitive advantage. However, if you're thinking about, like, I really want to build a strategic capability around understanding my players very well, and building not only lobby, but building actually a lot of other things around machine learning, data, AI, and stuff, then this is another level of a question that you need to consider. But here, also, what is quite important is actually to understand, like, if it is a strategic capability, do you actually have it on your roadmap? Do you have an owner to it that you can name, and like that person actually knows that he's an owner or she is an owner? And does this strategic capability that you put in a roadmap, does it actually survive a bad quarter? Like, for instance, something, goes south, or there is some firefighting happening because whatever changed. Yeah, like, will this be deprioritized, or will it stay on the roadmap anyway? So if it does stay, then it's definitely your strategic capabilities that you're pushing, and you actually know what you do. But if it doesn't stay, maybe then you're not treating this as a strategic capability, despite naming it like that. And then again, you can actually be a bit more flexible with what to put here.
I think
Yeah.
you touched on a massive point there, which is ownership, Viktoriia, because so often ownership and accountability go together. And if no one's going to be accountable, and no one wants to own whatever it is that you're actually building or buying or whatever it is, the reality is it's going to fall through the cracks. That is the summary of it all.
100%. Yeah. So I think, this is again to just the question to answer for yourself honestly. Question 2. Do you have a strategy of having everything in-house, or do you actually have external tools connected? Because I think, again, this is more around there are big groups of operators, or I will probably not pull the names here, but like, you definitely all know who they are. Their internal policy is to have everything in-house, which again, this is a strategy that they're taking, and this is where buy is probably not even considered. And that's also okay. Then you build it in-house, but then you just build it in a correct way, I would say. But again, it should work with, like, if you actually have the external tools like CRMs, like different other providers, you're already providing this data and sharing this data with some other third parties. So maybe then having everything in house is not really your strategy, and then, like, it's a different strategy. Like, which tools can I connect in the way so that I get the most out of them? So these are, again, like, two different paths to take, and this is the decision of the company which one to go. Yeah, and the third one is can you actually devote a team for 6, this is probably the minimum, to 18 months to work on this project? Because again, like even if you decide to build, then time is very important, especially right now, I would say. So in order to actually start doing that, you do need to have a team that is concentrated on doing just that mostly. And typically, there is time to actually hire people, there is time to make them familiar with what is going on. There is time to build, there is time to test, to iterate, and a lot, like and all other steps. So that's why I'm saying that it will probably not just be 6 months. It's going to be probably a bit longer, and you just need to plan for that. And if you have enough resources, because again, cutting on the halfway is not the best thing to do. Yeah. So I think we will pretty much stop here and we will go into the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this.
Let's go. So I will share my screen right now. Pum, pum, pum. Yes. Can you see it or not?
It is loading.
Yes.
Now we can see it.
Okay, that's quite like maybe if you're in the chat, if it is too small, let me know. Okay, and I will make it bigger. Because I see that on the screen you can actually make it bigger as well within the screen. Okay. So where do we start? As you can see, so we will go through the following things. So we will go through the inputs page. Inputs is pretty much the most important one. This is where you typically put all the inputs according different different articles that you need to know about. And then there will be build and buy different tabs where you can actually see the result for both. There is a monthly, so this is pretty much the calculation itself, which is done. And there will be a dashboard as well to actually compare like all the options together. So here within the inputs page, pretty much what you can do is this is what is needed in order to calculate it properly. So first we do need to calculate what is the to understand what is the monthly GGR. Based on that, what will be potential revenue uplift and what is the cost part allocated to that. And then we will see how this uplift is ideal, of course, showing a good result and is higher than the cost part. So how to use that? Here we actually have this is something that we have built. Again, don't take it as a truth. This is more like ballpark numbers, again, just to kind of have a bit of understanding of where we are. So there are 3 tiers that can be used, like based on your country of operations. And of course, there is also different regions that can be used in terms of salary, because for the build part, we do need to have people, and people have salaries, and different regions have different salaries, so which totally makes sense. Those benchmarks are actually, so for tier 1 and for these countries, they're actually here in this tab. Again, you can, in case you have your own numbers, you can actually just go and change them here, and you will just have it here straight away as a benchmark. So for instance, here we're taking tier 1. For instance, this is an operator with 5,000 monthly active users on average. Yeah, there is around 5 million GTRs that they're generating with this number. Like there is a casino share of GTR, there is a contribution margin on GTR. And here also we have some notes how to calculate different parts, so that again, you can always double cross-check it here as well. And there is growth component, but right now I'm not complicated that whole thing, because growth always complicates everything. That's why right now we're just putting it at 0. So here you have the benchmarks, but you can override them with your own values. And then those values will be taken actually into the calculation. So if you override it like I did here with 6,000 monthly active users, then it's going to actually be taken here with a GGR, like as it was right now here in the benchmark. So for instance, we're taking it like that. Then expected performance. Again, this is something which like you expect from the whatever use case that you're making right now here. So with the lobby personalization, for instance, typically on average, what is kind of adequate expectation is +8%. It can be like 5%, it can be 15%, whatever. But like let's just take this number. And again, you can always make it less just to understand like what is your bottom line, like where it doesn't make sense actually to have less than, let's say, 2% typically. Then there could be, for instance, especially since you're planning to do it, there is always good thing to, like, in order to actually measure this performance, you do need to have the A/B test. And within the A/B test, and even maybe in the rollout for some time as well, probably not all of your players will be exposed to personalization. That's why, again, you can kind of put this number here just to say that, okay, it's not going to be 100% of this 5 million, but it's going to be 80% of this 5 million. So it's going to be actually 4 that we are putting this 8% on top. And there could also be some of the ramp-up period, meaning that, again, you will not see the 100% of the uplift like from month 1. Again, typically, why not? Because you do the A/B test 50-50, which means that, again, you will not see you will see the 8% only on the 50% of the population. So this still kind of comes as a ramp-up period, so that like after, let's say, month 4, because first 3 months, for instance, you were testing, you were iterating stuff, and this is where you actually get the full one. And there is quite a nice thing, which actually, Claude was helping me to do that. But since I have a financial background, I know how to do these models. Again, good guidance creates magic results. So Claude suggested me to add this confidence factor because, again, it's not that it's 100% that it will actually bring you such a great result. There is always a percentage where it didn't work, or it didn't work from the first time and stuff. It's it's life. It's normal. It can happen. That's why for the buy, typically what is right now written in the benchmarks, at least, that there is 85% confidence factor, meaning that in 85% it should be all fine according to this uplift. And because this is buy, because again, this is a vendor who did it already with multiple operators, they already figured out like what works for whom in what way. That's why the success factor should be a bit higher here. With a build factor, it might be a bit less because, again, you're pretty much starting from scratch and you iterate and all the new iterations build your expertise, and only after some time probably it will be good. So it's actually going to take a bit longer, and there is also a possibility to fail. Currently, also in this model, I actually just override it with 100%. Let's take this out so that we're, again, not complicated that whole thing. You can, but like for now, we just take 100%. Then we go into build. So build, how many people you need? Typically, what I at least understand, again, on our experience, is that you definitely need to have one senior data scientist or ML engineer. You do need to have one data analyst, ideally, because, again, it's about research, about data insights, and about the building the technology itself. you do need to have half of product manager, for instance, or like whatever, like subject matter expertise. They should be quite heavily involved, but probably not 100%, which is okay. And potentially still need to have some of the people who will help you to set this technology on something. Yeah, because again, if it's about lobby, you do need to have infrastructure, like you do need to have data engineers, because you do like ML engineer need to connect to the data, need to transform the data, to work with this data, to actually process the data, to get the result, and then to push it somewhere, to push it towards the front page. And it should work like automatically, daily, change, like, updating every day. So there will be some other roles needed, like potentially data engineer, DevOps, maybe full stack for the front page. That's why it's again like more like half of the person needed. So in total, it's going to be 3.5. Again, this is my logic. You can build your logic based on what you think they should do and what you have. Then, if you need to hire people, well, you put how much time it will take. Then, so we hired people, and then like let's say it takes us around 5 months, probably is a bit conservative, maybe 3 months, maybe 2-3 months, again depending on whether people already did it before, know how to do it, and then can actually do it quick. So from what I remember, it typically really takes around 3 to 5 months to actually move it to the production, because production, again, this is already working in production. Potentially you can still test, in your sandbox or whatever. Then, okay, there is some kind of retention rates. Actually, what else is here is that like you can actually state that you already have all those people in the team. Then you just put it here. Actually, here you override 100%, and you put it here 0, and it pretty much says that like, okay, I have these people. I'm skipping that hiring part, so I actually start with this one straight away, which is kind of should give you better results as well. Then average base salary, some overheads, like it's not always about salary. If you hire a person, there are always overheads and stuff like taxes, benefits, equipment, whatever. Recruiting costs, inflation, it's out right now. Maybe some of the retention rates again, like of the people, attrition. So that's what is needed for the team to actually work. And then we have another part which is infrastructure. So let's not forget that, we will process the data, we will train the models. It will actually take some of the money in order to do that. If you do need to set it up like from scratch, then potentially it's going to be around that number, I would say. If you already have all the infrastructure in place, then probably it's going to be less. So again, this is a number that you can just decide for yourself. Maybe again, like here, I just put 0. For instance, we're already working on the infrastructure. Like we take this out of the equation, for instance. Then game catalog metadata source. Ideally, for the lobby personalization, again, to work well, there are different ways how you can do it. One of the way, you don't need the game catalog. So, it's the easier way. So another way, actually, you will need the game catalog. And as you know, game catalogs are always chaotic, messy and stuff, and you need to clean it. So this is probably where, there will be a bit of cost coming in order to actually make it, correct and normal and working, so that you can use it for the lobby personalization. And then there could be some of the one-offs, whatever, like for instance, the A/B test module, if you don't have one, or maybe there is something else which is needed for you, or like one time to actually make these changes for your front page so that the front page can actually show personalized games per player. There could be some one-offs. Again, right now I just put 0, but like you can decide for yourself and just kind of put the correct number here. And for the build, again, like if something doesn't work and you understand that, okay, we're closing the project, typically you cannot just close it tomorrow. Typically it takes some time to wind down, so this is a wind down time as well. So that's pretty much what is needed for build, and we already know our kind of revenue levels, the uplift, and this is where we can see how the build, like what numbers the build is giving us. So here, like we take 3 years, let's say, and we take that this is a personnel which is needed for that, and again, this is like ongoing team which is working. There is potentially recruiting cost, attrition if you need to hire people. Then there is cloud tooling catalog, whatever, like again, whatever is your number. And if there are any one-offs here as well. And then you can see that, okay, this is a total cost year by year. This is the gross value that the uplift has captured. And again, you understand that year one is pretty much about building. That's why here the uplift will be coming a bit closer to the like second half of the year, like months 8, I think here. That's why this number is not that big yet. And pretty much you understand that, okay, you are actually, months to first measurable result is 9 months. And this is like where you understand that, okay, on month 9, I'm starting to earn money. And actually, it kind of already nicely overcomes at least the cost invested into year 1. But from year 2, your uplift, is actually bringing you a lot of money. So that was the investment part, and this is where you're actually earning money on the uplift that you captured. And that's pretty much the business case for the all 3 years. Like again, very simple. Without any growth. We don't do here the, oh my God, I forgot how it is called. Like we're not calculating the NPV, the net present value, where you like all your future money is actually being a bit more devalued and you're bringing it to day to day. So we're not doing that because again, this is a complication and I'm not sure that it is needed at the moment. So that's pretty much your like real-time money, like by years. With buy, of course, it's a bit simpler. So you have a vendor, you have a subscription for the vendor. Let's say it's $6,000 or whatever, like for at least that monthly active users. Whether there is any implementation integration fee that the vendor will be charging, whether there is any, annual price escalation, whatever. But since we didn't put growth, so probably also didn't put growth here as well. How much time it needs to actually launch with a vendor, internal effort during integration, which means that like even though this is a vendor who is working with you, there was still a bit of effort needed from the team inside in order to actually support the integration, maybe if there are any changes for the front page needed, and to also monitor the A/B test. So that's why here, let's say we put like half of the person per month needed in order to maintain that whole thing. And then, and this is during integration, this is ongoing effort, let's say. Then potentially, again, maybe there is someone off needed for to change the lobby. This is more like an investment of the resources. I mean, like full stack or front end developer actually doing some work. Again, why? Because this is one-off. It's not ongoing effort. That's why it's not put in here, but like separately. And then like if there is any, how much does it take to actually exit the contract? Typically it's like 1 month. So that's a price of 1 month. And then we have a buy. So buy here is a bit simpler in terms of cost. So you have a vendor subscription, you have one-off at some point, and you have a bit of internal team effort. That's what we were talking. Actually, it becomes quite a big number, which is interesting as well. And then this is a total cost pretty much. And then the beauty of it, of course, that you start capturing the uplift much earlier than with a build. So it's already on month 3 where you start capturing the uplift. And pretty much that's why your year 1 is much, much bigger compared to the build. And well, pretty much your year 2, year 3 is the same as we had in build. That's why if you look at the 3 years, pretty much the buy gives you more value. But again, and that's why I was saying the time is important, because with build you do need to invest time, while with buy you can start straight away. And that's why time here actually creates plus 1 million, which is quite a significant amount of money. So if we're looking at I would say so here, so if we're looking at the different options, so build, typically you actually break even at 1 year, at 12 months. At month 9 overall, for instance, you actually get the first measurable result, like first good result. And this is like your 3-year net, meaning like revenue minus all the costs. Like uplift minus all the costs. With the buy, again, as I said, buy will quite often win exactly because of this difference in time. And that's why buy kind of quite often can provide this kind of bigger number. And that's why I was saying at the very beginning is that build is quite often a strategic decision. Do you want to keep it in-house? Do you want to have it as a strategic capability? And do you actually have resources to do that? So that's pretty much how I would at least think about it. Yeah. Gali, I know that was quite a long monologue. Oh my God.
I loved it.
How like, do you have any, maybe is there something that which was not understandable, for instance, that I could portray it for people?
I think there's only 2 things I'd add to everything that you've said, and I think it's important for the audience to hear it. And the first is that these are approximations; it's not promises. So if somebody takes this model, goes to a different vendor, and doesn't get the same result, that's not the model lying to them. It's an approximate breakdown built on stated assumptions, and the assumptions are all visible. So everything in front of us, that's something to consider. And the second is bigger. Every single line in the spreadsheet that we're looking at is one consideration. Behind it, there's budget, there's forecast, there's operational exposure, there's human capital. You're looking at operations, HR, legal, finance, product, tech. Several departments involved before you even begin. And I don't say this as a scare tactic. It's just the reality that this is a serious undertaking for any company. It definitely can't be done alone. So I think whoever is considering their options just needs to look at this from every angle so that they don't fall into any trap or come across any unwanted scenarios, or in the worst case scenario, fail. That said, you've just shown us all of this, and I'm sure everyone that's watching is thinking 1,000,001 things. So just to be mindful of the time, I've got a few questions that will hopefully answer some of them. So this is the part that I mentioned in the beginning where I'm going to put you on the spot. So I have a few questions for you that I'm going to ask, and you can just run through the answers, and we'll go from there. All right?
Yeah, sure.
So my first question that I had for you is, what happens if one of your ML engineers walks out, like the person who designed the whole thing?
Oh, well, that's a great question. Well, you just, well, I would say that this is a big risk again, this is a risk, and it can happen. And life is life, where people sometimes want to change or move to another company and stuff. So yeah, so I would say that it's going to be a bit of drawback, at least in terms of speed, for sure. uh, because potentially you need to ideally have another person to switch and to share the knowledge to, so that another person can pick it up. And again, this is time which you will just lose, and not sure that you can do something about it. Or you can just have two ML engineers, which know each other's work very well. Then probably you will not have such a reduction in time and a reduction in productivity. Yeah, but this is a great thing to consider, because again, that can happen. And yeah.
So then my next question, and it's not really like a quick fire question, it's more a retention question, and that is that knowledge is the asset, and right now it's the most portable asset in the industry. So as people move, their knowledge moves with them. So next question is, what if you do all of this, and the uplift doesn't materialize?
Again, this is also a scenario which is quite possible, especially if you're building. Probably, I wouldn't say that do expect that like your first model will show you a great result. Probably it will show some, but like not as big as you would like it to have. So, which means that again, you understand like, okay, what is right now is taken into account. What else we didn't take into account, what we can try, what hypothesis we can build. Again, pretty much it's all about kind of making it a bit more complex, because again, people are complex. And like expecting that one model will just kind of do all the magic instead of you, unfortunately, no. That's the reality, I would say. So yeah, so I would say that again, it is an iterative process, and you just need to understand that this is an experiment that you're doing, and that you have, I don't know, at least three ideally iterations to try out in order to get the result, and only after that making a decision. Because like first iteration might really not show you that result that you wanted, and it's okay.
So then obviously the big question here for people that are looking at this thinking, right, if we go down a particular path, it's not for us. The big question then is, what does it cost to stop either way?
Well, for the buy part, as since I was highlighting that a bit through the Excel, so with the vendor part, it's easy. You just kind of stop the contract, and typically it's like 1 month's notice quite often. For the build part, this is a bit more difficult. And I do see some companies which are doing it for 2 years and not getting some of the results that they at least wanted. So for typically with the build side, either you continue investing more resources in order to make it right, or if you stop, then pretty much you close the project and probably just let people go, which is again quite a difficult process, especially for some countries where you have very strong like these professional unions and stuff, where it's not that easy just to fire a person, for instance. So yeah, so I would just again consider that, because this is the responsibility that everybody is taking on themselves in terms of like, if I hire a person, well, I'm in a sense, ideally you don't let them go in 6 months. Ideally, they stay for some time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll add one small point there for operators to consider as well, and it's a situation that I've seen quite a bit. Especially if operators on a white label platform or some other non-proprietary solution, the one thing always to look out for is hidden conditions. So any vendor or any supplier that they're utilizing, it's important to unpack hidden costs, especially if they're not on their own proprietary solution. I've had cases where brands have wanted to move platforms. They're locked into generally 1 to 2 year contracts. You're allowed to terminate early. You're allowed to give that notice, but the conditions generally are, well, we'll let you go and you pay the hosting fee for the duration of your contract or what's left of the contract. So effectively, you're buying your way out of a contract, which also adds to cost. So just a small piece of advice for those that aren't on proprietary solutions: just make sure there's no hidden costs when looking to stop a project or move over to a different solution.
That's a good point. Sometimes there is a lock. So yeah, it just kind of, you just need to know and to read through the terms and conditions. Okay, so I know that we took already a bit more of your time. Like if you're still here, because I didn't see. One last thing, and we will let you go. Probably you have seen in the Excel that there was a third option. Yeah, the hybrid one. I just wanted to briefly talk about it, very briefly. So again, why there is a hybrid option, and I think that's also quite an interesting option, at least to consider and think about it. As you could see, that buy typically wins from the build and wins because of the time. I like hybrid, at least option, if we're being very creative today. Yeah, like could actually combine the two. So in a sense, you have a vendor who is actually start providing you value for some already from month 3, as we were talking about. And potentially what can be done. And I think that's possible to discuss, so I don't know, maybe at least I would say that maybe companies would consider such as well. At least I would definitely think about it. So for instance, you actually started with a vendor, you understand that, okay, it works well, it provides necessary uplift, because again, it might actually not provide. So like if it does provide a good uplift, like after some time, let's say after like 2 years or something, or 1 to 3 years, whatever, you can actually potentially just discuss with a vendor that the buyout of the technology. In that way, it might be a bit safer in terms of that, like since you're building, it might take longer. You might not come to that same result, for instance. And since the vendor has already it showed the result already on your data, and there was some expertise involved, maybe buyout technology could actually be a good thing, because again, you just buy out code, you place it into there, you actually have your team who is taking over, with whom the knowledge is shared, and they kind of know how to maintain it further, for instance. This is something which kind of works well for both in terms of time and to have a control within some time frame. So I decided to also include it as an option into Excel. You will be able to play around with it as well, just to kind of see. And that could be kind of also quite an interesting solution. Again, buy will still win probably, but with the hybrid typically wins from the build, again, because you have this uplift coming much earlier than it should have been, but you still have kind of an extra cost needed in order to buy out the technology. So that's kind of quite a creative thinking as well. And I think that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. I know that we took a bit of time, so probably you're already all gone. But anyway, we were happy to, to be here today, and we will share all the information and materials with you, with those who registered for this episode. In direct messages, pretty much.
I think the only thing left to say is that, following the vote, like what we did before, we'll have another LinkedIn poll for the remaining topics that we haven't yet explored. So the next episode is in the control of everyone again, which is super exciting. And I think on that note, that's where we wrap it for today. And a big thanks to everyone, as always, for tuning in, listening, giving us your time and your attention. And we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you. See you.
Ciao.